'Cause the game isn't played that way. You've got to stay on track. Walk on, watch your back.
Welcome to our podcast number 7, Social Engineer podcast number 7. We're excited.
Number 7.
Can you believe it?
Who the heck was that?
That was Dave. Dave putting on his new announcer voice.
Number 7.
Actually, I like that, Dave.
I'll do that from now on, all right?
Yeah. So this month, our podcast... Long pause, waiting.
Dave?
Oh, hey. No, number 7.
Oh, man, I tell you.
It took you time.
Yeah, forget it.
Sorry, I kind of spaced out there. I apologize.
Epic fail.
Man.
Long, awkward pause.
Yes, long, awkward pause. Podcast epic fail.
All right, let's try this one more time.
Okay. So this month, our social engineering podcast...
Number 7.
Thank you, Dave. We're really excited about this month. We got a lot of new things to discuss. We're just back from Shmoo. We escaped the 3 feet of snow that DC had, and everyone got home safely. Had a really great podcast down there too with our friends down there at ShmooCon. So let's see. Let's talk a little about what's going on new with the site. What's going on new with socialengineer.org. We've been reworking on some of the framework aspects, rewriting some of the older material there, replacing it with some new information, trying to upgrade some of the framework info there. So if you're familiar with the framework or you haven't been there yet, you can check it out on social-engineer.org/framework. Check out some of the new topics that we have and reworking some of the old topics. Let's see, Dave. I think we also, at Shmoo, we released a whole new edition of the SET.
Number 7.
And now on number 7, we move on to SET now.
All right.
You have some new and exciting information for us this month?
Yeah, so with SET, we released version 0.4. Well, with me working on SET, I've been doing a lot of work on for 0.5. And a couple of people have been really helping out quite a bit. One of the guys here, Josh Kelly, has been kind of going through SET and doing a lot of bug fixes and things like that. But I got an email yesterday from BRTW 2003, and he had a couple of really good ideas that I'm going to be incorporating into SET 0.5. So when you think of the social engineer toolkit, you want it to be kind of like a one-stop shop for everything that you do from a social engineering perspective, right? Well, one aspect that was missing, I think, was the ability to do infectious DVD, CDs, or USBs, and it'll auto-create it for you. So basically, with 0.5, what we're going to be releasing is the ability for you to create like an auto-run attack through both SANs, mini cruisers, as well as whatever USB device you want to, incorporate your Metasploit payload, or as soon as they insert it, it launches their favorite browser and then directs them back to your malicious site they have running the Java Apple attack on.
So you're actually going to have a utility in SET to create like a hacksaw?
Exactly right.
Oh,
Evil.
That's very nice.
mackerel. Oh man, this comes to one of the points again where we start debating: do we release this to the public, or just keep it for ourselves? I know with that comment, I'm going to have 1,000 emails going. That sounds like an evil upgrade. When will that be launching?
Well, I'm hoping it'll be done for... I'm actually speaking at Nauticon, so I will hopefully be releasing it then. I'm trying. It's a lot of coding. I've actually started researching it now, so it's going to take a lot of rehauling of the base engine, but it shouldn't be too big of a deal. And Nauticon's April 15th through 18th, so
okay.
If I can get it done sooner, I'll release it sooner. If not, then just plan on the April 15th through 18th.
Excellent. And we also
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, I am too. Also, I didn't really intro everybody, but Mutz, we have you here this month too.
Hi.
Anything new going on that you want to talk about?
No, not really. You know me.
Just there.
Yeah.
Jim, how you doing?
I'm doing all right.
Anything new going on in your area of the world besides probably negative 40-degree temperatures?
Yeah, maybe one of these days we might get some snow off the ground. I'm looking forward to that.
In summer? During the summer, maybe?
Yeah, maybe comes by.
Now, Mutz, I got to ask you this. Do we call Dave Relic, or do we call him Sackman?
Oh, you're right.
I don't know if we should change the nickname on the Social Engineer site.
All through Shmoo, what song was stuck in my head?
What?
I'm the sack man. I just didn't get it out.
That was the epic. That was the most epic. I mean, that was awesome, man. That was.
I don't think it was a fail. It wasn't a fail.
It wasn't a fail per se. It was, an epic fail.
It was not an epic fail.
Exactly.
All right.
Really?
Listen, it added to the conversation. I knew it was all going to happen ahead of time.
Oh yeah.
Mindless. How did you not see that one, Dave?
Dude, I don't know.
Sack
Seriously,
Maniac. Really?
you guys need to know the beginning of this though. You guys never understand. So I was presenting beforehand to kind of get everything going, and I had a little about me page. And I meant to say former life ... I was a partner of a company. Instead, I didn't put any periods in between there, and it said former life partner.
Oh.
So I'm in the middle of the presentation, and everybody's sitting there chuckling on that one. So this one, I went through the fine-tooth comb to make sure there was no things.
How did you not see the big fat logo?
I have no idea. I did not even think about it. I just thought that the A and E's can be used interchangeably, and that you guys wouldn't have a dirty mind.
Oh,
However,
yeah. I think your number 7 voice should be like, Sack Man.
You're not getting me to do that.
Oh, come on.
It's nuts. It's
nuts,
Jim.
Elwood,
It's Chris and Sack Man.
Oh, I tell you.
We're cutting this part out, right?
No.
No.
Definitely not. This is why I record and no one else.
Well, that was a
Chris,
good.
Tell us what's going on today.
Well, I'll tell you a little bit about our sponsor, Spy Associates, from spyassociates.com. They sent us just a whole mess of stuff that we were playing with at Shmoo, and we still have some things that we're still testing. Some really miniature cameras, one hidden inside of a Bluetooth headset, one hidden inside of a button. The other stuff that we got is bug and phone tap detectors. So some pretty cool stuff that we've been testing.
Yeah, what happened when you ran that?
Guys?
What happened when you ran that on some guy?
Oh yeah, that was great. We're standing there, and I was showing. I think it was Elwood. I'm like, hey, look at this new device Spy Associates sent me. This bug detector, and I whip out the antenna and I put it on the bug thing, and I'm just scanning. And this guy is standing right next to me, and my wave thing, and it starts going off, beep 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 beep. And I'm like, well, that's interesting. So I moved it away from him, and then I moved it back, beep 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 beep. And I'm like, okay, you have anything you want to tell us, man? I said, do we smell a Fed? And he's like, give me a T-shirt, and we won't make an issue of it.
See, the thing was, I'm not sure if he was serious or not, because he said it with a pretty straight face. He wasn't smiling or anything.
Yeah, he did say it with a straight face. So, we handed him a T-shirt and ran.
Oh yeah, I gave him a T-shirt. Actually, in fact, I took my T-shirt off and gave it to him.
Yeah, we gave him our wallets too. So that was interesting. But I'm going to do some write-ups on that, on this stuff. Just amazing. We've had a lot of people. I think Shmoo was very effective to bring these things. A lot of people were really interested in this stuff, and I think as a social engineer, these kind of tools can really make or break an engagement sometimes, just having the right tool set. Yeah. But we'll talk more about that on the podcast notes page this month. I tell you, I just want to get right into the podcast. I'm really, really excited. We invited a guest. Her name is Dr. Ellen Langer. She's works in the psychology department at Harvard University. She's done amazing amounts of research into persuasion and manipulation, something that she calls mindlessness, where I guess people, we just do things in a different mode where we're not even thinking about what we're doing. We just go about our daily routines and forget how we got from point A to point B in doing these things, and how this affects people in their daily lives. And of course, she doesn't come at it from a social engineer standpoint. She comes at it from a psychological standpoint, and how this affects people in their daily lives, their work, and how it can really be a detriment to them. And we could see that too, I think, from a security standpoint. So we're going to get Ellen on the phone now, do a little formal introduction, and then start the podcast. Our guest today is Dr. Ellen Langer. Dr. Langer is a professor in the psychology department at Harvard University. She has 4 books published right now. Mindfulness, The Power of Mindful Learning is the second book in that series. Then Unbecoming an Artist, Reinventing Yourself Through Mindful Creativity. And her new book, Counterclockwise, Mindful Health and the Power of Possibility. She's also published over 200 articles that discuss much of her research in 6 academic books. Dr. Langer, I'd just like to tell you a little bit about us as Social Engineer, as a group. social engineering is probably one of the largest threats to people in general and businesses today. Some of the research that's been done by many of the large security companies indicates that upwards 50, 60, maybe more % of the attacks on businesses today are done through social engineering, which is in essence way people manipulate or persuade others to give them information that is then used to breach their networks or steal information from them. Security professionals, what we do is we try to educate the community on different aspects of social engineering so they can be prepared for it and fight against it. We've done this through interviewing and discussing with many different types of people, from radio hosts and other security professionals. And we were very interested in getting a psychologist on our show because of the ways that you approach things, the way that you think about things. As social engineers, we think of we look at the behavioral effects of things as opposed to the behavioral causes. So we're very interested in some of your research that you've done in the past. So it's just to introduce you again, we have with us today Maddie and Jim and Dave and then myself, Chris. So one of the things that really interested us in your research was this story that you talked about in the past with Xerox, the copy machine research,
Yes.
and the word because. This was a very interesting to us reading that research that you did. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about that. What caused you to do that, and then some of the things you found in that research.
Sure. Years ago, when I first did that study, before I did it, I had recently moved from New York to Cambridge, Mass. To take the job at Harvard. And my stereotype was Cambridge was full of intellectuals, expecting to see them on every street corner. And all I observed was what seemed to me enormous mindlessness. And so in thinking about that, I came to study the mindlessness of ostensibly thoughtful action, where it looks like people are there, but in fact, they're not. And after 30 years of this research, I'm quite sure at this point that most of us, much of the time, are not in the present. And we're not aware that we're not in the present, so we can't easily fix it. And all of this research shows the enormous negative consequences of this excessive mindlessness. So what happened in that first study, what we did was just ask people, we sent people a memo asking them to return it with no reason given, and people just sent it right back. We had people break into law, ask somebody a favor at a Xerox machine, and they would say, "Excuse me, can I use a Xerox machine?" And at that point, people said no. But when you said, "Because I have to make copies," which is actually an empty request, there's no more information there, what else are you going to do with a Xerox machine? People said, "Sure." And the point of all of it is that when you plug into a familiar script, people mindlessly engage as if the content is sensible. So an example I talk about in the mindfulness book is where I went to make a purchase in a store. I gave the cashier my credit card. She saw it wasn't signed, so she asked me to sign it. She then ran it through the credit card machine and gave me the credit card slip and asked me to sign it. Then she compared the two signatures, which of course made no sense since I had just done both of those and had presents. But what was interesting to me about that was that she was completely oblivious to the fact that there was anything odd taking place. And that made me realize that yes, when we're not there to know that we're not there. So that if I were to engage in the social engineering that you speak of, if I wanted to manipulate people, what I would do is lull them into a familiar routine. And then, stick in whatever it is I wanted them to do. Everybody's had the experience where you'd say to somebody, "Hi, how are you?" and they'd say, "Fine, thank you," even though they just broke their leg an hour earlier, or something like that. But that's because we're so used to it. And so I do this demonstration, I think I reported in the Counterclockwise book, where I give people a series of numbers to add. So, do you want to do it?
Sure.
So add these numbers.
Okay.
All right, I'll say it, you add it. So
Okay.
1,000.
1,000.
40.
1,040.
1,000.
2,040.
30.
2,070.
1,000.
3,070.
20.
3,090.
1,000.
4,090.
10.
5,000.
Awesome.
Okay,
Wait.
so I would like to do business with you.
Oh my gosh! Wait, that's 6,000, isn't it?
No, it's 4,100.
Yeah.
4,000. What? Wait, hang on. I have to go back and listen to that again.
You will. You'll find yourself being amazingly duped.
Wait, did you guys all do that too in your head?
I absolutely
Yes, they
did.
did. They were just too embarrassed to do it out loud.
Well,
I
that's
didn't want to
okay.
admit it.
I don't mind being public humiliated for the sake of social engineering. That was awesome. You
It
just
was.
completely overflowed my brain.
Okay, so the major idea is that when there's something familiar, we respond typically in a mindless way. And the reason we do this is because we overwhelmingly seek certainty, and certainty leads to mindlessness. So if we recognize that in fact nothing stays the same, nothing looks the same across various perspectives, what we should be doing, rather than learning about the world in an absolute way, we should be learning it in a more conditional way, a way that suggests, sometimes this is true, but not always, and so on. But because we seek this illusion, end up with an illusion of stability, we get lulled into thinking we know what has already changed. So if you wanted to manipulate somebody, what you would do is set them up with all sorts of familiar pieces of information, so they become part of the situation, they buy into it, and then at that point you've got them. And that's what ads on TV do. Or on Madison Avenue. I mean, essentially, what's the difference? Why should it be that somebody pretty has better taste in the flavor of a gum? But you have a pretty person chewing the gum, and because we have these stereotypes of a halo effect, anything good is good in everything, we then end up feeling more positively towards that gum.
Ellen,
Yes.
do you find these scripts to be universal, or are there any categories, preset categories of types of behavioral patterns that you can apply different scripts to?
I didn't understand I didn't hear the beginning of the question.
Do you find these scripts universal, or are there different?
No, I would venture a guess that there are a few that are universal, but most of them are likely to be culture specific, because the change that you make at the end is very subtle. So, especially in different languages, so that if here we say, how are you? We respond, fine, thank you. If you're in a culture where people don't tend to ask that, then when you ask it, it's going to be somewhat unfamiliar, and that will provoke mindfulness.
So it's a culture thing. It's not a behavioral pattern of individuals.
No, what I'm suggesting is the specifics of what you're saying are culturally specific, but I believe across all culture, people tend to be mindless.
I see.
So would it depend, like your research, I was really interested in you started telling the story about the note that you sent out, a memo, and you just asked people to return it. Would that work, you're saying, that on all different types of culture, something similar to that?
Yeah, if they're used to seeing requests like that. So when I first published that study, people sent me all sorts of fun things that they experienced, and apparently this person had put an ad in the newspaper that said, send $1 to, and gave his address. And he made a lot of money. Because what people typically see is, you send $1 and I'll send you whatever the merchandise. And so you see that over and over and over again, and so the person probably felt, oh, $1 is not very much, I'll buy it without even having an it to be bought.
Right. That's amazing. Yeah, that's amazing. So then the next stage of your research with the Xerox machine, I was reading in this one article where you were interviewed. You said that word "because" had such a great effect on the way people thought about the next request.
Yeah, that because conveys that I have enough respect for you to give you a reason for my asking this thing of you. You know, when people ask things of us, sometimes they sound like orders, commands, sometimes they sound like requests. When they sound like an order, you know, if I say to you, what you have to do is, it doesn't matter what follows, people will take offense. I don't have to do anything.
That's true.
You see, even if what you have to do is accept this $1 million I'm giving you. You know, I think that people probably at that point would recognize it, but my guess is that when you're telling somebody something that is for their own good, but you say it in this demanding way, they won't respond. If you add a request, then it conveys that the choice is theirs, and people care a great deal about choice. But something that's peculiar is that while people love choice and will work for choice, they resent or stay away from fear, doubt. And the odd thing is that you can't have choice unless you have doubt.
So this is an interesting topic because, in essence, like what I'm hearing, if I'm hearing it right, is manipulating people is basically giving them the idea that they have a choice, but in such a way that the choices they're given all lead to the path that you want them to go to.
Yeah, so if you wanted to say, I think Hanganot said this maybe 40 years ago, but that if you want your child to eat eggs in the morning, then you might say to the child, how do you want your eggs, scrambled or hard-boiled? Huh. So you've already made the decision that the child is having eggs.
Yeah, okay.
Now, there's another whole literature that stems from my work on mindless that you might want to take a look at, and it's work on priming. So again, in the counterclockwise book, I have I report a little research about second opinions. Now, the medical world, insurance companies tell you to get a second opinion, but it's typically a waste of time. The reason for that is that the word second primes, not first.
Huh.
The word opinion primes, not fact. So a second opinion isn't worth very much.
That is...
Because people don't stop and think about it. Second is simply, it's Avis, it's not Hertz or whatever. So people tend to not question much of what the information is before them because they think they know.
That's
so they listen only to a little bit and then not the rest of it.
Yeah, that's really interesting because in one of the topics in social engineering that we talk about a lot is elicitation, how to ask proper questions. And some of the research that's been done on law enforcement especially, or people who have to be professional at questions, is the topic of preloading. So it's very similar to what you just said. Before you ask the question, preloading the target with information that will inhibit a response closer to what you're looking for. So like you said, that with the child, that's really interesting to me.
I'm sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to say, I really found that kind of fascinating. I've done that before, but never really thought about it, having children myself. You don't give them the choice. This is what you're going to eat, but you can decide how you want it.
Right, and there are a couple of other things that you might want to consider. One is anchoring. So if I were negotiating with you for a consultancy, that if I start at, let's say we're talking about per hour, and why not, since we're just making it up, I start at $10,000, $20,000 an hour. Now, what happens then is that you're going to come in with a very different amount typically. I started at $100 an hour.
That's true.
and still feel that you were making the choice yourself.
Now, how would you actually incorporate that into your daily life, and how do you come up with, anchoring and everything else beforehand so that you can actually do?
Well, if I needed some help with something and I said to you, do you have a few hours that you can give to help me? And then you say, gee, you can't, you have a very busy day. So then if I said to you, well, how about 20 minutes? So 20 minutes against several hours feels like almost nothing.
Right.
Whereas if I just said to you, do you have 20 minutes, you might be hesitant.
Ellen, do you get to use this in your day-to-day life?
Excuse me?
Do you get to use this in your day-to-day life?
My intention is not to manipulate people.
Of course, but
you
that...
see, the point is that no matter what you say to people, and you have to say something, that you're going to be organizing their thoughts, framing their thoughts. So what happens is if you watch political debates, that after the debate, somebody will describe their opinion of the candidate, and somebody else will call it a spin, as if there's a correct way.
Yeah.
You see, so the point is, once you recognize that there's nothing that is described that can't be described in different ways. So if you wanted to, and you said you should have this surgery because 85% of the people do just fine, you might feel differently from you should have this surgery, but 15% of the people do very poorly.
Yeah.
So you see what I'm saying? So it's not 85% doing well and 15% doing poorly look like they're the same from some rational view, but they're quite different because the doing well presented first has you then think about advantages and good things about having this procedure.
Yeah.
If you start with, you see what I'm saying? So that
It's a matter of presentation.
The questions people ask themselves are very, very important because the question determines the answer. So if you say to yourself, why am I awful? Let me count the ways. Or how am I a failure? You're not going to get the same answers as how am I a success?
Which even though, like what you're saying, they would point to the same answer in a rational way, but the whole view of it...
Well, no, they don't. It doesn't even point to it in a rational way because there's so much information that you can't take it all in, so that the question determines which parts of that information you're going to consider. Then the second part, which was similar to what you were thinking, is that once you take in the information, depending on whether you're looking at it in a positive or negative way, it's going to frame it. So, for example, if I say to myself, Logan, you're wonderfully spontaneous. Okay, or I can say, you're terribly impulsive. You're wonderfully serious. Or you're completely grim. You're somebody that can be counted on, dependable, stable. Or I can say you're rigid.
Yeah,
you
big
see
difference.
that, and both versions are true. It's just different ways of looking at the same thing. So in advertising, in persuasion, in conversation, what one does is either intentionally or unintentionally chooses one of these frames through which people will then gather additional information. People tend almost always to try to confirm their hypotheses. And there's always enough information out there to find confirmation. So that's why the questions you ask yourself are so important.
Yeah, that's a really interesting topic. We talked about this in a much lighter way once, like the way they sell meat, 70% fat-free, or 70% lean, as opposed to saying it's 30% fat.
Right.
Same thing.
Yeah. You can
I
have
probably buy the 30% fat one.
soda. You could have a can of soda that's described as fat-free.
Right.
Well, why should there be any fattening in the first place? But because people who are looking to lose weight, the word fat-free primes, this is something I can have, and, then they go forward. I mean, I read something again in the mindfulness book so many years ago, and that it happened to me I was walking along 42nd Street in New York. That's where the graduate center where I used to teach was located. And on one of these store windows, and down there, at that time, the stores were always going out of business, which of course they weren't, but it was a going out of business sale that they would have. And it said, "Candles that burn." And I almost went in to buy it,
Right.
because the mindlessness was, oh, here's something new,
As opposed to candles that never get lit, right?
Right.
So, is there a difference in persuading between the sexes, like how you would between a male and a female, or a male persuading a female, or vice versa?
Well, let's take that one step further too.
Yeah, I would say that give you the same answer that I gave with respect to different cultures. So, to an extent, that women are carry on their daily lives, and have conversations that tend to be different from men. Of course, they're not non-overlapping distributions. And so if something is said, and I think this is part of the problem in men and women having conversations, because she's interested often in feeling, and he often is interested in just getting the information across, and it depends on how you say it as to how she's going to respond.
Well, couldn't the same be used for age differences as well? Younger crowds are interested in different things than older crowds are as well. So when you're doing that, you definitely want to take those into consideration too.
Yeah, so if you were talking to young people and you made it sound high-tech, they would pay attention. If you were talking to many older people, let's say, people who are not computer literate, and you used language that made it seem techy, they would immediately tune it out, even if what you were trying to give them was something that was quite simple. I wanted to start a software company for women years and years ago, and not really, but just thought it would be fun to have a company that I called Software. And if you had a company called Software, I think then women would come into it.
Yeah, probably.
So words make a difference.
That's very interesting.
And you have these computer geeks who, these very smart guys who create these programs, and when you're using the computer and there's some error, not that you're making, but the person who programmed it didn't know, but it doesn't play that way. And so people who know that do just fine, and they continue and try to, work around the bug. But again, older people, then feel incompetent and walk away from it.
So assuming, let's say, we can't classify everyone just by their age or their gender or their culture, how would you know if someone's in a particular script? Like you talked about using these scripts before.
Well, you see, my whole career has been spent on trying to increase people's mindfulness. So rather than to try to manipulate them by making use of their mindlessness. And so then you end up in a different place. It would mean speaking more conditionally, with more, in my view, it would seem that from this perspective. So that what you're saying, and that's also less off-putting to people, but what that says is that there are many ways of viewing this. And that tends to bring the listener into the conversation, rather than speaking in absolute terms. If you have things were brought up in a world where, at least when I was a kid, we would be studying out of a book that would have things like the 3 reasons for the Civil War. Well, that's outrageous. From whose perspective?
Right.
So we've done some more recent research where we find that if you want people to blindly follow, what you should do is leave people out of the equation. When you want people to get more involved, put people in the equation. So, for example, as I say in Counterclockwise, whichever book, imagine that there's a sign on a lawn and it says, keep off the grass. Most people will keep off the grass. If the sign said, Ellen says, keep off the grass, and you wanted to walk that way, you'd say, well, who is this Ellen? Maybe she doesn't live here anymore. Maybe I can negotiate with her. And all sorts of things become possible. So if you want somebody not to do drugs, you say drugs kill. Well, medicine is drugs, so clearly drugs don't kill, or not all drugs. But if you say that in studies by Peter, Paul, and Mary in 1987, it was found that these drugs are likely to have negative consequences, then people are not as likely to just mindlessly stay away from them. So this is what I'm saying. So if you make clear, if I tell you that the chair that you're sitting on was created by somebody basically because of the height of his wife. Well, if you have that information and the chair is uncomfortable for you, it would occur to you to change the height. If you're just given the chair, we tend to see the physical world as if it's independent of creators. It just is. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, I do.
Yes.
I do.
And we would end up far more creative. So for example, you take an automobile, the seat goes forward and back. Well, that was probably just to accommodate as a Ford or whoever's wife. There's no reason, mechanically it would be very easy to create the seat so that it turns out so that somebody who has difficulty getting in the car can now get in. Which would mean that there are people who are not driving who feel incompetent only because of the way the car was built. And then they take it personally. So everything that we experience, virtually everything, was at one point a decision. And for it to be a decision means that there was some uncertainty. Once the decision is made, people then act as if this is the way it always was and can only be. And then they just accept it mindlessly. You go into a store and it says 1 scoop. If you want 2 scoops of 2 different flavors. Well, there's no reason why you can't have 1 scoop with 2 different flavors, but it just doesn't occur to people to ask.
Right.
This is fascinating. This ties into everything that we deal with in social engineering. It ties with NLP. It ties with literally everything. It's really, really interesting to hear this from a sort of educated and background rich way.
Yeah, well, I think that not to be too self-promoting, but I think that you would probably enjoy the 4 books in the mindfulness series, because they're chock full of these kinds of thoughts that seem to be right up your alley.
Yeah, no, this is wonderful. Like when you were talking before about the difference between the example you gave of a sign in your yard, no trespassing, or Ellen says no trespassing. To me, that just sounds like the way the whole world is schemed in political messages and marketing.
Yeah.
It's like designed to make us react mindlessly.
Yes, I think that's right, because mindlessness maintains the status quo. You don't think to question it. The idea of change is very, very appealing to people. It's like the word control. If you're not happy and someone promises change, of course,
right.
There are different kinds of change. That change is not necessarily good if it's more, twice as much of whatever the bad thing is.
Sure.
But people don't stop and think about that. It just change is good, new and improved. We have, and fat-free. Things that
You know what interests me about the topic as a whole is when you're talking, this seems to be the weapon that malicious social engineers use against the public. Like that one thing you said before, that you had someone you talked to or a friend that said they put an ad in the paper, send me $1. And there's no if statement, there's no what you're going to get, there's nothing there, and people send in money. It's like he was making a load of cash just by asking people to send in $1.
Right.
Malicious social engineers kind of use that same mentality, it would seem, to
let's
take
take
phishing, like where they go out and they try to gather many people with a very mindless offer, and even if 10% of them or whatever respond, then they were able to access data that they wouldn't previously be able to access.
Yeah.
Well, let's take the latest Aurora attack that happened, on Google and everybody else. I mean, everybody's been talking about it. I mean, the way that they, gained trust and used it in that instance was by targeting their friends, people that they knew. So it automatically removed a barrier that they might have had coming into it, and were able to successfully attack large organizations because they were already friends with the people that were already compromised.
Mm.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So how can I help you guys?
Well, I mean, the information that you gave us so far is it's amazing.
We want to hire you. We want
Yeah.
to take you. We want to take you.
Okay, remember that. So we start with 100,000 an hour.
So then we're
You
talking
can
120
make the
bucks an
next
hour.
offer. What?
$100 an hour.
Yeah, no, they use my answer.
All right, I'm sold on 100,000.
I'm going to give you 5 numbers. I want you to add them up to equal your salary. Maybe just let me. I know you come from. You said already you come from a different angle in the whole persuasion manipulation field. But let me just ask you this. Let's say one of the things that we do as security professionals is we help companies determine if they're vulnerable to certain attacks. So we do that both technologically by testing their networks and their infrastructure, and also their people. So we'll perform some of the attacks that malicious social engineers will perform, but with the goal of showing the owners of the company, here's where you need to educate your people so they don't fall prey to these things that can really hurt you. So if you were on a social engineering gig, let's say a pen test, and you wanted to persuade someone to give us a password, how would you do it?
No, I'm not going to tell you that. Although I could come up with several, but we'll go back to that consulting fee before we go there.
Was that 50,000?
Ask me one more general question, because I have 2 puppies next to me who are telling me that they need to go out. So,
okay. Well, maybe what we can do is ask. How can people be helped to stay off of these pre-programmed scripts so they don't fall prey to mindlessness?
Yeah. Well, and that's what the 4 books in the mindfulness series. Actually, if you wanted to, if you went to my website, which is www.ellenlanger.com, you can read the first chapter of the counterclockwise book.
Excellent.
But all of these books, and for over 30 years, the research that I've done is designed to figure out ways for people to be more mindful. And in that more mindful state, they're not going to be vulnerable to charlatans or even well-meaning people who are leading them astray. The essence comes down to learning the importance of uncertainty, and learning how to exploit the power in uncertainty rather than run from it, which is what most of us do. So that in some of the books I make clear that how hard it is to make predictions, even though people think that they easily can, and that the consequences of these predictions that people are making, whether they take them to be negative or positive, are as an illusion that events don't have outcomes. The outcomes that are in our heads, the evaluation of an outcome. So when you're stressed, for example, people think an event led to that stress. It's not. It's the way you're understanding the event. So if you understand it differently, the stress disappears.
Well, no, that's very interesting. That almost sounds like a topic of reframing the way you think about yourself and your reaction to the world.
Exactly, and it's not reframing with the intent on finding the correct frame. It's reframing and reframing and reframing, realizing that the information doesn't have a single understanding, so there's no reason to respond to it in a single-minded way. And then you stay open. When you don't, it's like when you travel. People pay a lot of money to take a trip someplace, and because of that, they stay open to novelty. They want to see everything that's new to justify having paid the money for the trip in the first place. But everything is new at home as well. And so when you recognize this idea of just actively noticing new things, which is the essence of mindfulness as I study it, you just notice new things that puts you in the present, it makes you sensitive to context and perspective, and you recognize that that's the essence of engagement. So it feels good, it's fun, and the 30-some-odd years of research shows that it's the essence of our physical and mental health. There's no reason to do anything but be mindful. So people just have to learn that it's easy, that the reason they're being mindless is because they've processed things as absolute that in fact are not absolute. Yeah, and that this whole idea is engaging. It's the essence of passions we like. But all you need to do is notice new things, and you become passionate about the thing that you're noticing. So that's what a lot of advertising is about to get you to pay more attention to it. Notice the nuts and the caramel, and look at the chocolate. In fact, they have two different kinds of chocolate, and how the chocolate seeps through, And with each of these, it's brought in further and further to it. So if you had even an advertisement where you had things that encourage people to notice new things versus the same item but half the price, I think that people would pay more. But I'm not going to tell you how to manipulate people, because what we want to do is help people learn to take better care of themselves.
So how do they say something's ingrained in a person from childhood? How does someone go about actually changing?
Yeah,
to what you said?
If I had time, I would be happy to share it with you. But actually, the Unbecoming an Artist book, which only uses art, it's not really about art. It's about how to remove the roadblocks that prevent our mindlessness. Because it's very easy to prevent mindlessness. Just learn conditionally in the first place. Learn that this could be a table rather than this is a table.
That sounds like an excellent book for security professionals.
Yes.
Yeah. But to remove it once it's there is a much harder task, although by no means impossible.
Well, I mean, if you look at it, I mean, people that were brought up their entire life with something like, for example, an alcoholic father or things like that, they have certain things ingrained in them that they're typically skittish throughout their entire life until they seek help.
But if they just read these books, they would probably have enough help to see it differently. And when you recognize that, and I'm serious, I know.
I agree with you.
But that behavior makes sense from the actor's perspective, or else the actor wouldn't have done it.
Yep.
And so if you recognize the sense that different people's behavior makes, then you become easier and less judgmental. And then you become less judgmental of yourself, and everything starts to fit. And when you're in that state of this greater balance, you're not being judgmental, you're pleased with yourself, then you're also less vulnerable to other people's attempts to manipulate you, because you don't have to run from your own mindfulness.
That is amazing.
Your own view.
That is amazing.
That really is. That's probably the most valuable piece of information that we got on the podcast so far. That's wonderful.
All right, so I'll send you my bill in the morning.
And the check's in the mail.
It was 50,000, right?
So, can I ask you
talking to all of you.
Can I ask you one last question?
Okay.
Besides your 4 books that you have talked about here, which sound excellent, especially coming from this field, are there other books or authors that you think that talk about persuasion or this topic that are worth reading?
Robert Cialdini has a book called Influence.
Yes, that's an excellent
book. So Bob and I are both social psychologists, so we're familiar with the same literature, and take it in slightly different places, but I think that you would find that interesting. I think that if you looked at the literature on priming, that you'd find much of interest.
Okay.
As well. Okay.
Ellen, thank you so much for your time today.
Well, my pleasure. I want you to go practice your arithmetic.
Yes, I'm going to listen back to that, and I tell you, I'm going to try to figure out what the heck I did wrong there.
And Chris, you're going to say 41, or you're going to say 5,000 again. Trust me.
I can't. I'm going to do it with a calculator this time.
All right, guys. Be well.
Thank
you very much.
All right, take care.
What a fascinating conversation.
That was. So, I mean, I think she laid out some really good details on, how we can actually use that as security professionals. I mean, everything that she pretty much explained is really how we try to manipulate people, and as well as how we try to protect against it. So, I mean, if you really look at it, I mean, a lot of these things we really have to keep ourselves focused and on edge to really kind of predict what someone might do from a malicious standpoint.
I thought the podcast was amazing. I think the information that she laid out on us is
unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's
possibly one of the most powerful podcasts we've had up to today, seconding only by our radio guy.
Yeah, Mishki.
Yeah, I
Mishki.
know.
Yeah, Mishki.
So, I was just amazed. I mean, the way she's talking about, she's using different terms that we do, like with framing and reframing and preloading.
Pretexting.
And, these things, but just to hear it from a completely different point of view than any kind of security, anything to do with security, just coming at it from as people in general. I thought that was just truly mind-altering.
Yes. Definitely. What I understood from the whole thing is that you need to understand where the person is coming from in order to trigger certain natural behaviors in order to get what you want.
There's so many variables too that you have to take into place. I mean, it almost takes a PhD or a doctor to be able to do something like this in some senses to be 100% effective.
Well, I'll tell you what I've been looking for, and I've been asking for this in several. I asked Mishki this as well. What I'm trying to see if there's any general categories of people where and I'm trying to think practically. You're walking into a lounge and you're trying to assess and categorize a person, and then according to that category execute a certain type of behavior in order to get them to respond in the way that you want. So you don't have to be able to map it 100%, but if you could get the general 80% behavior and see if they go into any subcategories, and then try to identify these people and apply the right script on them, then that's exactly the way to master that.
Yep.
Yeah, and then to me, one of the things that just popped in my head as she's talking is after we do social engineering engagements or audits, you give everyone a copy of that book. Here's what you need to read so you don't fall for this again, Here's the part of the closing package, unbecoming an artist,
Well, I mean, a lot of these things, I mean, I don't even think you can really protect against. I mean, a lot of that is just really so ingrained in how we've been raised in our entire lives that, I mean, without some serious, intervention by trying to change your habit, I don't think it's really possible to change these. So you can probably mask a lot of your attacks off of these predefined attack methods that you can use that would generally be overly successful to most people, I would think.
I agree with that in a general sense that maybe it would be hard, but that was one of my questions to her was how do we go and change these things?
And basically what she said is that once the population becomes mentally aligned and stable, then everything will be okay.
Yeah, but I mean, even from a personal note, forgetting about society as a whole, there's definitely things that I would like to reframe for myself. Like she said, that one example, you sit back and you say, how many ways do I suck? And you can list them as opposed to saying how many ways have I succeeded this week.
Ironically, by the way, I calculated 4,100.
What, the ways that I suck?
No, when we were doing the math, I calculated 4,100.
No, you didn't. Come on.
I know.
I swear to God I did.
I'm calling shenanigans.
What stinks is in my head, I knew that the trick was going to be I'm going to add a number up wrong. You know, I knew it. I didn't know what it was going to be, but I knew it. So I'm doing the math really carefully in my head. But then by the third or fourth number,
The minute you said 5,000.
I started cracking up.
I'm feeling confident by the time by the third or fourth number because I'm doing the math right. I'm quick, just like she said. You're getting mindless. She created mindlessness in me.
Yeah, very interesting.
It was amazing. It actually blew my mind. That's
So
like
next time we need to add someone's bill, you know how to do it. So that's 4,000 plus 10, 5,000. Thank you.
Seriously, we should probably post that on the site, on the social engineering site, to kind of do as a little test. I mean, for someone.
Heck yeah, I think this is
That's a
going to
trick.
be... I always put these in the podcast notes, so this will definitely be in the podcast notes page.
You know, what'd be neat is if we did like a mind trick section of se.org.
That would
You know,
be
where we
great.
just have different mind tricks you can do on people.
I think it really that could be a benefit, and then as we collect these things, just keep adding them. That really did like kind of freak me out a little bit because I'm doing it in my head, and I'm like, I know this. She's going to try to trick me. I mean, it's the whole setup for it, so I know what's about to happen, but I still.
Well, and that's the thing, though. I mean, you saw in literally 2 minutes that she was able to basically own you. You know, but that's the thing. I mean, when you're dealing
She
with people
found the
and
right
humans
return address.
Pop, Chris.
But that's the thing, though. I mean, if you can find a lot of those commonalities within specific individuals, I mean, you could pretty much play them all day long as much as you want to from a SE perspective and get away with it in most cases. So,
Yeah, but that's the thing. She said she does this as a demo in her speeches, so this is not like Chris Hadnaggy fell for it. This is when she's given her lectures, rooms full of people are falling for this unless they
That's what I'm
have
saying.
ADD.
Chris, this is a less impressive version of the video, yes?
Oh yes, but we can't talk about the video now because that's going to be a surprise for all our listeners.
I'm hooked on those books. It sounds very, very interesting. It's just down our path, you know.
Yeah, I'm not kidding. I'm buying that number 3 book. I'm buying that. I'm becoming an artist today.
Yeah, no kidding.
I think that's an essential book for all hackers and security professionals. This is like, you know.
I think
remove all the inhibitions that you have and things that you think you can't do, and just go ahead and do them.
We better tell Amazon to stock up because when we post this, everyone's going to be buying that book. Maybe she just social engineered us into selling her book.
She obviously did. She obviously did, and she's damn good at it. What I'm trying to tell her.
Maybe we should hire her for 1 gig.
She's probably like the most educated social engineer out there. When I asked her whether she uses this information in her day-to-day life, she didn't answer. She gave me a very nice story about something completely different. But,
and we all fell for it and read it.
Well, it was.
Okay, that's a good topic.
Interesting story. So we let her get away with it, but she's definitely very masterful. You know, I think that she could definitely go into marketing, social engineering, anything that involves, you know, that revolves human behavior, and probably be very, very successful at it.
Yeah, very successful.
Including social engineering.
I agree.
Give me your password. Here it is.
Yeah.
Here it is. Take it away from me.
80% of the people in the past have given me their passwords. What is yours? Man, that's epic. Epic.
See, I think that so much of this comes down to the fact that we all have so much going on that we have to operate on autopilot on so many different points. It's a necessity.
Well, we can't always be at 100%, you know, carefulness, or our minds would be exhausted.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So knowing when that happens and knowing how to take advantage of it is, I mean, like, I know I used to do this all the time back when I worked further away from home, and I would spend an hour in the car, and I would space. I'd be in my head for 40 minutes and not realize how I got from point A to point B, and I was just on autopilot the whole time, you know. And so how many points of your life is your decision making happening in that same manner that where you're in a prime position to be manipulated at that point?
Well, I tell you, Jim, one of the stories that she gave us that I think just outlines that perfectly is that every people's everyday jobs, like that grocery teller.
Yep.
You know, the grocery teller's job is to compare the credit card signature with the receipt signature, so that way she can be saved from credit card fraud. So she did her job mindlessly, even though she just watched Ellen sign the credit card and then sign the receipt. Of course they're going to be the same signature. right? I mean, it's unbelievable but it shows something very clear to me, I think, that people do their jobs, the things that they're supposed to do every day, in a very mindless way. When she was talking, I thought, the age-old pretext of the guy walking in, the social engineer walking in as a tech support guy. It's like the tech support guy walks in, people just hit the buzzer, they let you in the server room, and you have free reign. It's like mindless. People don't think, well, this is a different guy, whatever. It's okay, he's here for tech support. People do their jobs each and every day, and don't really engage their brain to think about, why is this different? How is this different? How should I react because it's different?
Well, that's why SE is so successful. I mean, the spear phishing attacks, the targeted attacks against individuals. I mean, their guards aren't up. You're removing their guards, which is why SE is so successful in many cases.
I agree.
Well, I think a lot of it comes down to the fact that when people are doing their jobs, when they're instructed on what actions to take, not necessarily the result that's expected of them. And so it doesn't really matter what other inputs they're having. They're instructed to complete the sequence of events, and that's what they're going to do.
Yeah, I agree, Jim. Well, guys, thanks. This month, the podcast's amazing. I really, really loved having Ellen on the show. Some great questions and good conversation. So I guess we'll tune in next month. Look forward to talking to you all again. Just to mention on the way out, you can, if you like the outro music, you can check out Michael Anthony on ccmixer.org. You can check us out on Twitter, Human Hacker. IRC channel on Freenode is social-engineer. Of course, our website, social-engineer.org. We'll see you guys next month.
So many problems you face. Walk that away. Stay on track. Walk on. Watch your back. Walk on. Stay on track. Walk on. Watch your back. Walk on. Walk on. Walk on. Walk on. When I'm thinking about the times you say, talking about every single day. 2 steps forwards and 1 step back. Walk on. Trying to remain on track. Yeah. Stay on track. Watch your back. 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 Walk on. Walk on. Walk on. Walk on. You walk up the line. Time after time. Thinking things will stay the same. Now the game isn't played that way. You've got to stay on track. Walk on, watch your back. Walk on, stay on track. Walk on, watch your back. Walk on, looking around you and thinking it's okay. Forgetting about the things that you did yesterday. But if you only knew that the game isn't played that way. Stay on track, walk on, watch your back, walk on, stay on track, walk on, watch your back, walk on, stay on track, walk on, watch your back, walk on, stay on track, walk on, watch your back, walk on, stay on track, walk on, watch your back, walk on, stay on track, walk on, watch your back, walk on, stay on track, walk on. Watch your back, walk on. Stay on track, walk on. Watch your back, walk on.